How's everyone doing on this very cold, miserable New York day? I have a feeling that we're going to have a very, very bad winter. So that keeps us right in line. We've already had a bad spring, a bad summer, a very foolish fall, and now we're going into a very grimy winter. Hey, how's your weekend? This is the Concerned Forum. I'm Robert Gumbs. And always remember, the truth does matter. Now, unless you live underneath the rock, which unfortunately too many of our fellow citizens do, then you know, or you must realize, that right now, America, our America, is on a very, very dangerous, or I should say, in a very dangerous place right now. And guess what, people? We're on the verge of losing our democracy. Now, I know when I just said that, there are some of you out there that are saying, oh, well, what the hell? We don't have a democracy anyway. Well, to a point, I understand that feeling. But you know what? I've been around most of the planet, and I will tell you something. Let me assure you, it could get much worse indeed. And, you know, some of these people, some of my fellow citizens that yell about ineffective politicians and ineffective government and ineffective institutions, you know, that's a problem with a lot of Americans. We like to pass the buck, you know? And guess what? I believe it was Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, when the fellow says, hey, the fault lies not in our stars, but in ourselves. Well, you know, that's true, quite frankly. And these folks right now that are screaming, you know, the ones that are screaming the loudest, I'm talking about the so-called people that follow Trump. Let me say something to you folks out there that follow the great one. And it's this. You know, one of the problems that I have, and I'm a Democrat, and I'm what you would call a left-wing, very left-wing Democrat. I'm proud to say. And, you know, I hear you people, this clown tells you to come to the Capitol and overthrow the government, and you do it. Then you go up to the judge. I think it's about 600 of you guys and gals that have had to go to court. Some of you are kept in jail, and some of you will have to go back and forth. But, you know, some of you stand up there and you say, well, I did it. I thought I was doing the right thing because the president told me I should do it. Well, see, in the first place, a couple of things on that. Someone needs to ask you, Did you go to school? Okay. Did you get out of the eighth grade? Can you read? That's another question. Because hell, by the time I was in the sixth grade, I knew that you have laws and that's how we do things in America, or that's how we're supposed to do things in America. And you said that, well, this guy who I like because he makes me feel good wants me to do something that is outside of the law. So I'm going to do it. So let me ask you, who, do you think you still think that you're innocent? Who do you think should be punished? You or Trump? Who told you that it was okay to come to our house? See, and that's another thing that we need to get clear in this country. See, as I said just now, I'm a very hard liberal, progressive Democrat. A good model of government to me is Norway or Denmark. Yeah, that's right. I'm one of those. I believe that you cannot, in a modern 21st century society, you have to have a mixture of things, and it doesn't have a damn thing to do with taking away your freedom. But you think that it's okay to dump feces on the floor, to urinate and defecate on the halls of the nation's capital, of our Capitol buildings, which, by the way, were originally built, constructed, mostly by my ancestors. Don't take my word for it. Read the comments of the second president of the United States, Mr. John Adams. And somehow, you got it in your head that it's okay to do these sort of things. Now, I'll tell you one problem that I have with you Trumpists, the Republicans, conservatives, new conservatives, I'll call you, right? One big problem that I have with you folks is that I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And you know something? Most sane people don't either. You yell, you scream, you call people socialist, you call people communist. And why? Do you know what that means? I really don't think that you do. And you jump up and down and you make all this noise. The majority of those people that were arrested, they have money, they have jobs, they are able to afford to fly from Boogaloo, Mississippi to Washington, D.C. And, what's your beef, man? Seriously, abortion? So because in most states, a woman's right to choose is the law, is that why you felt it was okay to tear up my house, to tear up your house, to tear up our house? I don't get that. What else is it? Oh, well, you feel that you're being discriminated against. Tell me how. What, with the NBA or the WNBA? I mean, what the hell is it? Or is it that you see things that you don't like? Is it because same-sex marriage is legal? Is that why you feel that you're losing America? That the folks that live in a house a couple of blocks from you, Bill and Jim, that somehow that attacks your Americanness? Is that why you did what you did to our home? You see, that's what really baffles people. And, this thing about, oh, well, it's the Hispanics. Well, what are you? You're just a part of the native soil. In other words, you've always been here. No. You're an immigrant. You are descended from immigrants. So, what is it? And this new thing, CRT, something that is generally taught in law schools, okay? Yet you see this as a personal affront. But see, I tell you what you see. You're phony. Because it's not CRT that upsets you. It's that anything taught about American history, for some reason, you feel embarrassed. Well, there are embarrassing things in history, both as nations and as people. We have embarrassing things in our past. But that's no reason to destroy our government. These people, these so-called Republicans, well, number one, I always have to make differences. I don't see them as Republicans anymore. And I think that I'm an authority. Very seldom do I put myself out there as an expert or as an authority on anything. I say that because, well, put it this way. I say that with the full realization that none of us are perfect. But when it comes to talking about the Republican Party, yeah, I'm pretty much as one of the best there is. You see, I grew up in the Republican Party. My parents were super active Republicans. My dad was a district leader in Harlem, nonetheless, for the Republican Party, the west side of Harlem. As a matter of fact, he even ran for the Assembly as a Republican. I know what the Republican Party used to be. I know the Black and Hispanic people in large numbers that were in the Republican Party who were registered Republicans. I knew of the union members that were Republican, members of the Republican Party or registered Republicans. But that was a different Republican Party. I remember when the Republican Party used to give communists hell before the Republican Party got a president that not only tried to negotiate with them, but literally slept with them. Remember Donald? and how he was in love with the dictator of North Korea. And I know from my time in intelligence, Donald has been very close to Russia, going back into the 80s. So I would say to the Republican Party of today, stop saying, don't call yourself the party of Lincoln. The party of Jeff Davis? Okay. The party of the Confederacy? Yeah, okay, that suits you nowadays. Party of the Ku Klux Klan? Yeah, that's about right. But I think that it's wrong. I know if I was related to the Lincoln family, I would definitely be suing the Republican Party if they ever tried to use that, slogan, the Party of Lincoln. And, oh, please, stop with this, like that poor, sad girl, what's her name? Candace, whoever the hell her name is? Or some of these other flunkies of color that you will probably trot out at the next Republican convention. And I would remind people that the Nazis, when they took over Norway, they were able to find their quislings. I would like to say Sambo, but quisling would be more, I guess it might be more appropriate. Quisling, that was the Prime Minister of Norway that sold out his country to the Nazis. Well, basically, that's what I would see as a person of color who still claims to be a Republican. You're very naive, or you're selling out your country. And I'm not saying that because you happen to be black and Republican. I was Republican myself for a good while, until I recognized the fact that there was no going back. Yeah, I started off as a Democrat, even though my parents were Republicans. And oddly enough, during the Clinton era, I was a Republican for about 11 months. And that's when it really hit me. Yeah, Romney Sr. was right. And by Romney Sr., I'm talking about the senator from Utah. I'm talking about his parents. Wonderful people, very wonderful people. I met him when I was a kid at some function that my dad took me to. Pro-choice, pro-ERA, pro-civil rights. And that was the warning that Romney's father put out there back in 64, 65. That's why he would not support Barry Goldwater. I don't recall that he actually tried to label old Barry as a racist, but he felt that the party was starting to drift too far to the right. That's why he did nothing in the Goldwater campaign in 64. He did not attend, I don't even think he attended the Republican convention. And the Republican Party, you see, how should I put this? You folks were warned. You guys who follow Trump now, who vote Republican now, you get very uptight when people call you fascists, KKK with the suit and tie, all those quips, right? That really pisses you off. But you were warned, right? If you've been active or kept up with politics over the last 30, 35 years, you were warned about the direction that the party was going in. And you chose not to listen for your own reasons. And now, for a lot of Republicans, it's a simple case of, well, I'd rather have a dictatorship than seeing Hispanics and blacks on an equal footing. And for Hispanics, because I'm half Caribbean, that's where my father's people were from, and him and all the rest of them were Spanish speaking. Are Spanish speaking. He's gone, my dad is, but his family is still down there. All the way from Trinidad to the Bahamas. I have a cousin that's the prime minister for that Dutch island, Curacao. But that's the Caribbean. It's a mixture of people. This whole thing about, for example, you have the Democrats have a problem with the Cuban community, the Venezuelan community. Listen, you need to stop thinking that you have to keep up with the Joneses, because that's essentially all it is. All right? Cubans came up here. America opened up her arms, built universities in Florida for the Cuban immigrant population. I don't question anybody in their desire to leave someplace where they feel oppressed. But I don't understand the difference between someone from Haiti and someone from Santo Domingo and somebody from Cuba. Because basically they all look the same. You have Cubans, my complexion. You have some that, what's the term, Anglo. They look Anglo. But it's all the same. They're all a mixture of people. It's just that people adapt certain things when they come to America because of the intense racism that we have. I mean, it's better. Don't, you right-wingers waving the flag, keep your pants up, okay? No one's saying that it's as bad as it was in 60, okay, or 59. I grew up in the movement, so to speak, and I know. I can remember when we got our first television. The only black person that you ever saw was a maid. Seriously, they wouldn't even have black people as vagrants in shows. All right, that didn't come until later. The only respectable black people that you saw on, black person that you saw on television was Nat King Cole. That didn't last for too long, but it was there. So, Bill Maher, my brother Bill, look, you don't have to tell me. I know I'm a wild, crazy, progressive Democrat, okay? But you don't have to tell me that it's not as bad as it used to be. I know that. But see, you have to remember, yes, it's a hell of a lot better than it was, say, 1960. Much better. But you see, when you say that, by the same token, you must remember people paid for that. People paid for it to be better, to get to where we are now. I mean, you got blacks with their own shows, you got Hispanics, right, doing a wonderful breakout on network television. Asians are starting to be, actually be seen and heard. Oh my God! And back in '60, I don't even think. My God, did you see people from India in this country? Unless they were a student, it would be very hard to see that. So yeah, it's a lot better. But as I said, when you say that when people say that, I put it that way. I don't want to put this all on Bill Maher. And to be totally transparent, I love his show. But sometimes he says things that I kind of, I guess I'm just kind of thick because it just go right by me. But yeah, that cost. It was combat. People had PTSD from that because it was actually a war. We forget, or it seems like we want to forget. Both Republican and Democratic presidents had to bring out troops and put troops on American streets to ensure that black kids and Hispanic kids would be able to go to school, to the public schools where their parents paid taxes for. They wanted the right to go to a public school of their choice without being killed. They wanted the right to be able to go for professional education, i.e. doctor, lawyer, what have you, in the state's university system without being killed. So yeah, it cost. Oh, and they wanted to be able to have the right to vote without being killed. So yeah, this whole thing, it has been costly. And I don't know, some of these so-called, well, they are parents, but these people that they're crying now about CRT, as I said earlier, this is basically something that they discuss in law school. What CRT does, it breaks down, and it's the discussion about how our legacy of hate and violence and institutional racism, how that affects law in our society. Now, I can't see that being taught to any fourth grader, all right? But as I said earlier, it's about the history itself being taught. So let me see if I got this right now. You say, for example, if I lived in Texas, you would say that it's okay to teach that the Holocaust didn't happen, that you don't have a problem with kids reading books that say that there are two sides, or there were two sides to the Holocaust. However, if you want Hispanic kids to learn about unjust and even unlawful land uh, what we do with the land. With the land being taken from the original inhabitants, I'm talking about Mexican families or Mexican American families that had tracts of land, and that land was stolen or taken from the original families. You don't want them to learn about that. You don't want them to learn about the gasoline baths. It was thought that the Mexicans were so dirty that you had to scrub them down in gasoline before they could go into a Texan's home and do housework. You don't want them to learn about that, though. See? You don't want them to learn that one of the main causes of Texas getting her independence and then the Mexican-American War later on, you don't want it taught that that evolved or came about behind slavery, because Mexico would not have slavery. And you don't want those kids to learn about that. I don't get that. So you don't want us to learn about what happened to the Jews in the Central and Eastern European Holocaust. You don't want that taught. And if it is taught, you want to say that the Nazis had their side of the story as well as the Jews. I got a hard time trying to figure that one out, because I didn't hear about any Jews trying to put Nazis in concentration camps or in ovens. But let's get these arguments down pat so that we each know what the other one is talking about. So the Holocaust may or may not have happened, and if it did happen, the Nazis had reasons for making it happen. Land somehow on the southwestern borders of the United States that belonged to other people, somehow magically the other people lost the land and the Americans, Anglo-Americans, took it. But you don't want us to learn about that. So I guess you don't want us to learn about the Trail of Tears when Andrew Jackson had thousands of Native Americans marched from Florida, Georgia, Virginia, the Carolinas, and marched them all the way to Oklahoma, to that area. You don't want them to learn about that either, right? I guess you don't want them to learn about the Chinese Exclusion Act, where America said, no, if you're Chinese, you can never come here, and you definitely can never be a citizen. I guess you don't want folks to learn about that either. So what the hell is it that you want us to learn? Because I can assure you that this whole thing about history and it being taught, our kids aren't the only ones that need to know these stories, okay? I would say over half the population of the United States, adult population of the United States, needs to know these stories. And I guess you don't want us to learn anything, and I mean nothing, about chattel slavery here in America and the resulting Jim Crow with the attendant violence that happened after the slavery, the official end of chattel slavery. I guess you don't want us to learn nothing about that. Well, see, one point needs to be made, and that is the reason why we need to talk about these things now is because we need to talk about these things now, because if they have been taught in the first place, we wouldn't be going to these conversations all hot and heavy. And some of these conservative people, I mean, they say the cutest things, you know, like, oh, well, how come the left always wants to teach bad things about America? Well, allow me to say that anytime someone starts off the conversation using that type of language or expressing that type of an idea, you're showing me and you're showing the world how ignorant you are, to be quite frank about it. And see, I was getting ready to say something about my party, the Democratic Party, and that is that we are too gentle as opposed to the Republicans. I mean, nowadays, the Republican Party, or as I call it, the new fascist party or the new Taliban, well, they're a bunch of vicious animals, quite frankly. That's how they conduct themselves. All you have to do is from their own words. I think it was something, didn't Jesus say something like that? In some situation that he was in, and he said something to the effect of, by your own words, you can, basically by your own words, you condemn yourself, and that's what these people do. It's just like when my man up in Minnesota, when he was murdered by that cop, what's his name, Chauvin? You had white people in Sydney, Australia, thousands demonstrating around the American embassy about the racism and about the murdering, especially of black men. And now, unfortunately, we have to include black women. So I'm trying to figure out if white folks in New Zealand and Australia, Paris, Spain, around the world can look and say, hey, something very funky is going down there and has been continuing to go down in America. Why is it so difficult for a certain group of Americans or a certain type of American to acknowledge the problem? And, I don't have a problem with disagreements, okay? I do have a problem with ignorance. And as a Democrat, I think that that's something that needs to be said. As we said back in the 60s, 70s, you need to tell it like it is. When you see someone basically saying racist things, doing racist things, They're a racist. You call it what it is and you move on. It's just that simple. I'm tired of worrying about sparing people's feelings. I am more concerned about I'm more concerned about truth, because truth is how you learn, right? And unfortunately, we have a good bit of the American population that is so wrapped up in lies that it's dangerous. It is absolutely dangerous. You know, people are getting killed behind this whole hate thing. And that's not good for this country. It is wrong. Yeah, America is not perfect. But just like anything else, it takes work. And that's what American democracy is. American democracy 101. You have to work at it. Why? Because this place was created by people, by human beings. And human beings are not perfect. What is detestable is when you have people that just want to sit on their haunches and say, oh, well, everything's fine. And anyone that brings up a problem, oh, well, they're a communist, they're anti-American. Hey, look, people like that, just like we used to say in the Navy, somebody who basically comes across like a nut job, they're not carrying a full sea bag. And when you sit up there and tell the American people that they shouldn't have to learn about slavery, that they shouldn't have to learn about the Holocaust, that they shouldn't have to learn about how Plymouth Rock fell on the Hispanic population, that we actively said in America, America said, if you look a certain way from a certain place, you can't come here. That, yeah, we committed genocide upon you and robbed you of your land, but that's okay. We don't have to talk about that. People who hold those kind of ideas, hey, you're not carrying the full sea bag. I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand, why is it that something that Europeans don't have a problem learning or picking up on, but that's just a problem here in America? You got people walking around saying, oh, well, slavery wasn't the cause of the Civil War. That is one of the, you know, in American life today, that is one of the most dumbest ass things that people, you know, say. And I really don't understand. Excuse me a second. And I really don't understand how is it that people don't get that. If I told you I shot Joe Blow because he robbed me of $1,000, rest assured, I shot Joe Blow because he robbed me of $1,000. You have the heads of the Confederate government telling the world, yeah, we're starting the war because we feel that the North is trying to stop us from expanding our lifeblood, which is slavery. Now, that's what they said, okay? Black Lives Matter didn't say that. Martin Luther King didn't say that. Chuck Schumer didn't say that. My girl AOC And the squad did not say that. The Confederate States of America said that. But oh, I guess you don't want to teach that either. You know, one of the something that really we have really become famous for, body bags. Yes, sir. From Korea, from Vietnam, to the Middle East. I remember the first time I went into service after I became, hit 17. I went to boot camp, basic training. This is way before I went in the Navy. But I went out there to Fort Dix in New Jersey. This is while Donald was having his daddy pay the doctor to get him out of the draft. But anyway, they have the Air Force Base also out there at Fort Dix. I mean, back then. Now it's mostly a reserve installation. However, the Air Force Base still runs. It's still running. And I can remember watching them get the bodies off of the jumbo jets, or it was big C-130s, with the bodies coming back from Nam. And that's what we have become known for since the Korean War. We just say, body bags. But that's what we do. That's what America does. So what is that? Korea, okay, Asia, Vietnam, Asia again, the Middle East, more brown people, dark people. And it occurs to me that the reason why we have all our boys and girls coming back in body bags is because we send them to places where we really don't understand. And whereas Americans, we don't understand. And when you don't understand the culture, when you don't understand the history, you make mistakes, big mistakes. You get yourself in a lot of trouble. And in the case of America, that's what that trouble is. It comes back in body bags. And my point is that how in the hell can you be a world power, continue to be a world power? You set the standard in technology and, like it or not, in culture, right? Entertainment, everything. You're going to do all this, but you don't understand a damn thing about yourself. And see, that is the problem here in the United States. That's one of our major problems. It's like we're so scared to see who we are as a country, as people. So if we have such a difficult time taking a look at who we are and who we were, how in the hell, how in the great blue sky, how in the name of common sense do you think that you are going to be capable of going 10,000 miles away to somebody else's crib and you are going to legislate and pontificate about what they should or should not do. And then we get surprised when these boxes start coming back from overseas. And I think that that is insane. You can't understand, or excuse me, you are afraid to understand how this country came about. Why do you think that why do you think that you are fit to go to somebody else's place? Right? You're screwed up in Korea because you didn't understand that those people, they didn't want the West to do the same thing to them that the Japanese had been doing. Same thing with Southeast Asia. Same thing with the Middle East. You don't get it. And I say the reason that you don't get it is because you don't want to get it. Because it's too painful. What do you think about a place where people, they're voting, they hold office, but a bunch of people say, well, hey, we can't let these people continue to hold office because we're superior to them. So you just go into City Hall and you throw everybody out. And say, well, you're not the mayor anymore, or you're not representing this district anymore. I am. And here, I got my shotgun and my Colt 45 to prove it. Well, that happened quite a few times, especially in the South. That's what happened in North Carolina. And you want to say that anyone that brings that point up is a communist or a socialist. And what's really sad is that these people who say these things, they don't know what the hell a socialist means. Seriously, they don't know a socialist from a communist, from a Republican, excuse me. Oh. I tell you, this climate change, what it does with people's allergies is a shame. But anyway, I'm just so sick and tired of the fear, basically. And see, that's the only thing that Trump has done. Trump has not done a damn thing for working class America. Nothing, nada. And the sad thing is that he wouldn't know, even if he wanted to do something for working people in this country, he wouldn't know what to do it. Because as we have seen time and time again, this guy is not bright. He's stuck up there, he's one of them because he was fortunate enough to be born into a wealthy family, right? And that's all. I hate that's another thing, these people that want to, pass themselves off as, I'm hard working. No, you're not hard working. Come on, asshole. You were born into a rich family. It's like you're born on third base and you want to act like you hit a home run. And one thing about me, okay, maybe that's because I'm a kid out the projects. I despise when I see people being made chumps out of. And that's what that's what we have in this country right now. I'm tired of seeing white working class people being made chumps out of. See, the basic thing, here goes a basic point. Most of us believe in freedom, okay? We're Americans, we're born here, and quite frankly, that's the end of it. Where do you go from there? Well, the founding fathers, and God knows, they had their imperfections, right? Slavery, sexism, some of them very sharp, double-dealing business practices, right? But they had the basics correct, though. That's why you never see a word about slavery in the American Constitution. Because there are certain things that God Almighty, we know they're just wrong and are incompatible with a free society. Now, these are questions that John Adams raised. These were questions that beautiful, sad, hypocritical, wacky genius, Thomas Jefferson. This issue of slavery, I hear it ringing like a fire bell in the night. In other words, he's saying that sooner or later the question of slavery is something that America will have to answer for. And this is basically what's going on now. And a lot of Americans are going to have to make a choice in the election next year and in 2024. And it's basically this: what is more important to you? Showing traditional disregard for people of color, or keeping your democracy and your form of government? Because you're not going to be able to do both. Right now, you have one major party that doesn't believe in the democratic form of government. And you have another major party that does. And you should already know which one is which. But I will remind you, the only savior right now, I'm not talking about 15, 20 years down the road. I am talking about right now. And this is one of the issues that I have with my good friend David, who comes on this show from time to time. You know, you have people that talk about, oh, well, we need to have a people's party and all this good stuff, and you know, both parties are no good. No, that's not true. That's not true, and that's not helpful. The facts are that the only party that believes in democracy, that believes like Lincoln, where you have a government for the people, by the people, of the people, only party that believes that and acts upon it is the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, the so-called party of Lincoln, that party no longer believes in government by the people and for the people. Show me what a man does. Not what he says. Show me what a man does. And I'll tell you who he is. Right now, the Democratic Party is fighting for the right of all Americans who are legally entitled to vote, get the opportunity to vote. And that should not be an obstacle course. Your right to vote should not be an obstacle course. That your right to vote is sacrosanct. It's just like I live in the downtown area and I want to vote. She lives in a rural area and she has the right to vote. And that the ability for the guy downtown and for the gal in the rural area, that ability should not, there should be no anything blocking either one of them. That they both have the equal right to vote. Period. The Democratic Party believes that. The Republican Party doesn't. And unfortunately, now the Republican Party is constantly screaming about voter fraud, even though they know that there was no voter fraud. But they're going to yell it anyway because they want people to lose faith in their institutions. See, that's why I tell you, quite frankly, the Republican Party wants this to be a genteel, at least starting off, genteel dictatorship. Because people who believe in democracy, who believe in the people's right to vote, they try to help people to be able to vote. They're not trying to find ways to stop people from voting, as the Republican Party has done. And the reason, well, actually, there's a couple of reasons. One of them is that the Republican Party knows that the American public, if we had open voting, which is something that we need to move to in this country, if we had open voting where if Joe is running for office, I can just go out there and I can vote for Joe. And that's it. And if Mary is running for president, I can just go out there and vote for Mary, period. You know, no electoral college, nothing to, you know, play with my vote. And the majority wins. But see, the Republican Party is doing everything they can to make this look like, I don't know, like Russia, quite frankly. Now, these people that constantly, we will not have socialism or communism. I really do, I can't stand ignorance, truly. There's nothing wrong with being ignorant. Ignorant just means that you don't know something. But by the same token, what's worse are people, are we okay for time, by the way?
1 hour already.
I have so much fun talking to you folks. I'm going to have to wrap it up quickly. But just to make the point, socialism, all socialism means is that we do things through government that we can't do as individuals. I don't know anything about sewage, right? Do you want me to work on my own sewage tanks? I live in the city. I live in an apartment, right? if everybody does everything for themselves, right, you're going to have a mess on your hands. You see, this is something else that people are afraid of. It's like Americans have lost touch, or many of us have lost touch with common sense. We don't ride in posses after bank robbers anymore. We have delegated organizations, public organizations, that handle that. You have local law enforcement, you have federal law enforcement, state law enforcement. That's socialism, because that is being done by the people for the people. That's all socialism is. Communism, that's something different. And remember, both of these are economic systems. They have the right to vote in Norway, in France, in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, in Switzerland. That's right, all throughout the first world. So this thing about America and freedom and democracy, we're not unique in that regard. All right, we're one of the, I think we're the first or the second in history. But this thing that they constantly throw out, when I say they, I'm talking about the right wing. They're talking about, so-and-so, Democrats are socialists. Well, guess what? You're a socialist. If you don't believe in any form of socialism in government, then give me your Social Security card, and don't ever let me hear about you getting a Social Security check when you decide it's that time. Because those are socialist principles. But it doesn't stop you from having the right to vote, eat red meat, drink red wine, and, party till the cows come home. But what the right wing does, they take advantage of the lack of information that unfortunately afflicts too many American people. And that is the danger. We're going to go into some of this more, and we're also going to go into historical aspects of this next time. But in the meantime, I want to thank you so much for bringing me in your home. Keep listening. And oh, by the way, check us out on YouTube. I think that you'll, for those of you that have a difficult time catching the show every Saturday at 3 o'clock. But once again, we thank you, and we'll see you next week, same time, same channel, same place. May the Creator bless you, and be good to each other. Take care.